I'm gonna fire this thing back up, stuff my entire family in here, put my race truck on the back, and then see if we could drive this thing 800 miles to Florida. Sounds fine.
Millions of people know Derek Bieri as the man who can bring almost any forgotten vehicle back to life. On Roadworthy Rescues, he revived abandoned vehicles that most mechanics would have given up on, helping turn the series into one of television's most recognizable automotive shows. But despite its success, the series came to an unexpected end, leaving fans wondering what really happened behind the scenes. Join us as we uncover what Derek Bieri revealed about Roadworthy Rescues.
This time at Roadworthy Rescues, we bought an awesome Thunderbird. Terrible shape, so I did the right thing about a Worcester travel all to pull it home with. 800 miles.
After building Vice Grip Garage into one of YouTube's most popular automotive channels, Derek Bieri brought the same hands-on approach to television with Roadworthy Rescues. While the YouTube channel continued to grow, the series introduced his unique style of rescuing forgotten vehicles to an even wider audience on Discovery Plus and Motor Trend. Instead of restoring rare classics in a fully equipped workshop, Derek traveled across the country searching for abandoned cars and trucks. He challenged himself to get them running again with little more than basic tools, mechanical experience, and whatever resources he could find along the way. It was a straightforward concept that resonated with viewers and quickly established the series as one of Motor Trend's standout automotive programs. Despite its success, however, the future of the series changed almost overnight. On November 18, 2024, Motor Trend announced that it would no longer produce original unscripted programming. The decision came without warning to the productions involved, leaving Roadworthy Rescues and several other series facing an uncertain future. The announcement also left many viewers confused because new episodes of Roadworthy Rescues continued airing even after the cancellation was announced. And that's because the third season had already been filmed, so Motor Trend released the remaining episodes as planned instead of pulling them from the schedule. As disappointing as the cancellation was, it is worth stating that it had very little to do with Derek Bieri or the quality of work done on the show. The decision was driven by changes taking place much higher up the corporate ladder. At the time, Warner Bros. Discovery was carrying an enormous debt burden and had already begun cutting costs across its television business. Once that decision was made, Roadworthy Rescues had little chance of surviving, regardless of its popularity or loyal audience. The move to Discovery Plus and Max earlier that year may have also made matters even more difficult. When Motor Trend shut down its standalone streaming service, Roadworthy Rescues moved with it, requiring viewers to follow the show to a new platform. Some happily made the switch, while others weren't willing to pay for another subscription. None of those issues appears to have been the deciding factor, but they came at the worst possible time, just as Warner Bros. Discovery was looking for ways to reduce costs across its entertainment business. Although Roadworthy Rescues introduced Derek Bieri to a much larger television audience, the opportunity came with demands that most viewers never saw. Bringing forgotten vehicles back to life had always been the easy part. Balancing a national television series with one of YouTube's most successful automotive channels proved far more challenging. Long before his debut on television, Vice Grip Garage had been built around the same storyline. Derek traveled alone or with a small team, bought neglected vehicles that had often been sitting for decades, and documented every stage of getting them running well enough to drive home. Because he controlled the entire production, there was no fixed shooting schedule beyond the one he created himself. If a repair took an extra day or an unexpected breakdown changed the direction of a video, he simply adjusted his plans and kept filming. Television series, however, worked very differently. Every episode of Roadworthy Rescues involved a production crew, camera operators, sound technicians, producers, and carefully coordinated travel arrangements. Locations had to be secured in advance, filming days scheduled around multiple departments, and episodes delivered within strict broadcast deadlines. Even though the program retained Derek's relaxed personality on screen, the work taking place behind the cameras followed a far more structured process than anything required for a typical YouTube series. That change represented a significant adjustment for someone who had built his reputation on complete independence. Before becoming a full-time restorer, Derek had spent years in corporate leadership roles within the manufacturing industry. He eventually left that world in pursuit of something with greater freedom and flexibility. Vice Grip Garage gave him exactly that. Every decision, from the vehicles he rescued to the length of each video, remained entirely his own. Roadworthy Rescues never appeared to change Derek's personality, but it inevitably changed how his time was spent. Producing a full television season while continuing to operate Vice Grip Garage meant juggling two full-time jobs at the same time. One demanded the consistency and coordination expected of a network television series. The other relied on the spontaneity that had attracted millions of subscribers in the first place. By 2023, longtime followers had begun noticing a change. Vice Grip Garage, once known for its steady stream of weekly uploads, was no longer following the same predictable schedule. New videos began appearing less frequently, prompting discussions across social media and automotive forums about what had changed. Some believe the television series had naturally reduced the time available for YouTube, while others simply hoped Derek wasn't planning to step away from the platform that had built his career. Despite those concerns, Derek never abandoned Vice Grip Garage. If anything, the channel remained at the center of everything he did. Even while filming for television, he continued producing the revival videos that had made him one of the most recognizable figures in the automotive community. Uploads may have become less frequent, but the channel itself never stopped moving forward. It simply had to coexist with the demands of a television production operating on an entirely different scale. Looking back, the timing makes the cancellation of Roadworthy Rescues even more significant. While losing a national television program was undoubtedly disappointing, it also allowed Derek to focus once again on the platform he controlled from the very beginning. Without the demands of network production, he returned to creating content on his own terms, following the same philosophy that had turned Vice Grip Garage into a success years before. However, the cancellation of Roadworthy Rescues wasn't the only challenge Derek Bieri faced during the show's run. In early February 2023, Derek was riding dirt bikes on his property in Tennessee when the front forks on his bike suddenly failed. Thrown over the handlebars, he hit the ground with tremendous force. The crash left him with several broken ribs and dislocated fingers, injuries that made even the simplest movements painful. For someone whose career revolved around working on vehicles, the timing could hardly have been worse. Sick Week 2023, a grueling 1,000-mile drag and drive event that stretched across multiple racetracks in the Southeast, was only days away. Unlike a conventional race weekend, competitors were expected to drive their own cars between tracks, covering hundreds of miles on public roads before returning to the drag strip to race again. Mechanical reliability mattered just as much as outright speed, making it one of the toughest endurance events in grassroots motorsport. Derek had planned to compete in his 1971 Chevelle, but the car still needed work that his injuries made impossible to finish. Under normal circumstances, withdrawing would have been the sensible decision. Broken ribs make even routine mechanical work difficult, particularly when lifting heavy components and crawling underneath a vehicle. Most people would have accepted that the event was out of the question, but Derek didn't back down. Instead of withdrawing, he switched to his 1970 Dodge Challenger RT, better known to fans as the Vanishing Paint Car, which was already prepared for the competition. Although the Challenger solved one problem, it didn't change the physical condition he was in. He still had to spend long hours behind the wheel, climb in and out of the car repeatedly, and endure the constant vibration and impact that come with driving a high-performance muscle car over long distances. Even getting strapped into the driver's seat was no easy task. Broken ribs are among the most painful injuries to recover from because almost every movement of the upper body affects them. Yet Derek chose to push through the pain rather than watch the event from the sidelines. Fortunately, his determination paid off. Despite competing with an injury, Derek completed the week-long event and recorded the quickest pass he had ever achieved in the Challenger. It wasn't just a personal milestone, but proof that even under difficult circumstances, he was unwilling to let a setback dictate what he could accomplish. Derek had barely put the bike accident behind him before another tragic incident followed. In July 2025, while driving home from the Iola Car Show in Wisconsin, his black and red 1991 Chevrolet Suburban suddenly caught fire. Unlike many of the vehicles featured on his television show, this wasn't an abandoned project or an old truck he had picked up for the series. It was one of his personal vehicles, a Suburban that had become part of his family's story after years of road trips, adventures, and countless miles together. According to Derek, the fire originated in the rear air conditioning system while he was traveling home. At first, there was little indication that anything was seriously wrong, but within moments, smoke began filling the vehicle, and by the time he managed to pull safely onto the roadside, the flames had already spread through the rear of the Suburban. Despite his experience rescuing vehicles from seemingly impossible situations, this was one problem beyond saving. The fire intensified so quickly that there was little anyone could do except watch as years of memories disappeared in front of them. Fortunately for Derek, no one was injured. Shortly after the incident, he took to Instagram to assure his fans that everyone traveling with him was doing fine. The update immediately shifted the conversation away from the loss of the vehicle itself. While many fans were saddened to see one of the channel's most recognizable trucks destroyed, there was widespread relief that the incident hadn't turned into something far more tragic. For many people, that would have been the end of the story. Derek, however, wasn't prepared to let years of history disappear completely. Rather than accepting an insurance payout that fell well short of what the truck meant to him, he arranged for the Suburban to be carefully dismantled so that every usable component could be salvaged. It was a practical decision, but also an emotional one. Although the body had been destroyed, much of the drivetrain had survived the fire. Among the components recovered were the truck's big block engine and transmission, both of which would eventually find a second life in another project. Rather than leaving them on a shelf or selling them, Derek installed the powertrain into a Chevrolet square-body rollback truck fitted with a Chevy bed, allowing part of the Suburban to live on in a different project. Unfortunately, the loss of the Suburban wasn't the last setback Derek would face. In March 2025, someone broke into his truck and stole the tools he relied on every day. Sharing the news on Instagram, Derek revealed that for the first time in more than 2 decades of working as a traveling mechanic, someone had stolen his entire Boxo toolkit along with a Milwaukee case containing additional equipment. To anyone outside the automotive world, they may have looked like ordinary sockets, ratchets, and wrenches. For Derek, however, they represented years of experience and familiarity. Professional mechanics often develop an instinctive connection with their tools, knowing exactly where each one belongs and reaching for the right socket or wrench without even thinking about it. That kind of familiarity can't be replaced by buying another toolbox, no matter how new or expensive it may be. Derek admitted that the theft was difficult to accept, particularly because the stolen kit had become part of his daily routine. Although he praised the quality of the replacement Boxo equipment he later purchased, he made it clear that losing the original set was still frustrating. It marked the first time in his career that the tools he depended on while traveling had been stolen, bringing an unexpected interruption to work that rarely stopped for long. News of the theft quickly spread throughout the automotive community. Followers shared Derek's post across social media, hoping the stolen equipment might be recognized if it appeared for sale. Others offered advice based on their own experiences, suggesting GPS trackers hidden inside toolboxes, better vehicle security, and closer monitoring of local pawn shops. Although the stolen tools were never recovered, Derek refused to let the incident slow him down. He replaced what he needed and returned to work, continuing to produce the roadside rescues and long-distance adventures that had become synonymous with his series. Viewers watching the next video may never have noticed the difference, but behind the scenes, Derek was learning an entirely new set of tools after more than 20 years of relying on the old ones. But that was not the first time Derek had been targeted because of his growing public profile. 3 years earlier, while he was away from his property in South Central Tennessee, trespassers entered the premises and searched through several of his vehicles. In a Facebook post shared afterwards, Derek explained that multiple hoods had been left open and doors left ajar before the intruders eventually left with a 1-barrel carburetor and other items they considered valuable. What disturbed Derek most wasn't the value of what had been taken. It was the possibility that the burglary had been carefully planned. In the same post, he said he suspected the people responsible had been watching the show and knew he would be away. The incident left his family deeply shaken, prompting him to issue a direct warning to anyone attempting to track down his home or other properties. He made it clear that his residence was not a tourist attraction and urged people to respect the boundaries between his public work and his private life. Although Derek responded by improving security around the property, the break-ins demonstrated an unfortunate reality of internet fame. The same videos that introduced millions of people to Vice Grip Garage also revealed enough information for a small number of individuals to locate places that were never intended to become public destinations. But the theft was only one of several challenges Derek faced in 2025. Some months after the toolbox incident, he found himself dealing with another problem that no amount of mechanical skill could solve. This time, it wasn't stolen tools or damaged vehicles. Instead, it was the rapid spread of false information across social media. Without warning, posts claiming that Derek had died began appearing on multiple platforms. Some alleged he had passed away after a garage accident, while others claimed he was suffering from a terminal illness, facing legal trouble, or had mysteriously disappeared from public life. None of the stories contained any credible evidence, yet many were presented with sensational headlines, edited photographs, and fabricated details that made them appear convincing to people who encountered them for the first time. Like many online hoaxes, the false reports relied on repetition rather than facts. Once one account published the story, countless others copied it, often adding new claims or altering existing ones to make the rumors appear like independent reports. Within a short time, the misinformation had spread far beyond the websites and social media pages where it had originated. The rumors soon spread beyond social media and reached Derek's inner circle. Friends, relatives, and longtime followers began calling and messaging him, hoping to confirm whether the stories were true. His wife also became aware of the false reports, while his children were exposed to the same claims circulating online. What had started as another piece of internet misinformation had quickly become a source of genuine anxiety for the people closest to him. Eventually, the rumors became impossible to ignore. In September 2025, Derek addressed them directly through Instagram, reassuring followers that he was alive, healthy, and continuing to produce videos. He urged people not to believe the false stories being shared online and expressed frustration that the same rumors continued resurfacing despite repeated denials. Although death hoaxes involving public figures are nothing new, the rise of short-form video platforms has allowed misinformation to spread faster than ever before. The situation also highlighted a growing problem faced by many television personalities. Unlike traditional media outlets, social media platforms allow false information to circulate worldwide within minutes, often reaching millions of people before corrections have a chance to catch up. Even after Derek publicly confirmed he was alive, copies of the original rumors continued appearing on different accounts, forcing him to deal with the same misinformation repeatedly. Beyond the emotional toll, the hoaxes also created practical consequences. Every false report generated another wave of messages from concerned fans trying to confirm whether Derek was safe. Time that could have been spent filming, traveling, or working on vehicles was instead devoted to reassuring people that the stories were entirely fabricated. It was an unusual challenge for someone whose career had always been built around restoring old machines rather than correcting internet rumors. No doubt the false death rumors were frustrating, but they were only one consequence of Derek Bieri's growing popularity. As the ViceGrip Garage brand continued attracting millions of viewers, the growing attention began creating problems away from the cameras. The same videos that built Derek's career were also revealing more about his personal life than he had ever intended. Like many TV personalities, Derek regularly filmed on his own property in Tennessee. At first, the location simply provided a practical place to work. It offered enough room to store project vehicles, film repairs, and carry out the kind of large-scale automotive projects that would have been difficult in a typical suburban neighborhood. Over time, however, each new video revealed a little more of the property. Familiar buildings, driveways, and surrounding landmarks gradually gave determined viewers enough clues to work out exactly where Derek and his family lived. Once that information found its way onto social media and automotive forums, it spread quickly. Publicly available property records made it even easier for people to confirm what they believed they had found. Before long, some fans were driving to the property in the hope of meeting Derek in person, taking photographs or catching a glimpse of whatever project he happened to be working on. At first, many of those visits were well-intentioned. Most people simply wanted to meet someone whose videos they had followed for years. Unfortunately, not everyone respected the boundary between a public figure and a private home. Some visitors entered the property without permission, while others wandered around the garage or treated the surrounding land as though it were part of a public attraction rather than someone's family residence. The situation became even more concerning after Derek's property was broken into in 2022. Although there is no evidence linking the burglary to people who had identified the property through his videos, the incident reinforced Derek's growing concern that too many people knew where he and his family lived. For Derek, the issue wasn't simply about protecting his own privacy. His wife Jessica and their 3 children also called the property home. The same workshop that made filming convenient stood only a short distance from where his family lived their everyday lives. As the boundary between work and home became increasingly difficult to maintain, the property no longer offered the sense of privacy it once had. Eventually, Derek concluded that the situation was unlikely to improve. In 2025, the Tennessee property that had become so familiar to the viewers was listed for sale, bringing an end to a chapter that had once represented exactly the lifestyle he and his family had been searching for. To understand why Derek eventually decided to leave, it helps to look back at why he moved there in the first place. Before relocating in 2021, Derek worked from Minnesota, while also maintaining another shop in neighboring Wisconsin. As his commitments continued growing, that arrangement became increasingly difficult to sustain. One of the biggest challenges was the weather. Much of Derek's work takes place outdoors, whether he's reviving abandoned vehicles in open fields or carrying out repairs in driveways and workshops without climate control. Minnesota's long winters often brought those projects to a standstill. Derek later explained that freezing temperatures cost him as much as 3 to 4 months of filming every year, making it impossible to film at the pace his audience had come to expect. The move wasn't driven by work alone. Derek and Jessica also wanted a different lifestyle for their family. Both had grown up with the freedom that comes from living in the countryside, and they hoped to give their children the same experience. They wanted enough land for their boys to ride dirt bikes, four-wheelers, and explore outdoors without the restrictions they had encountered in their previous neighborhood. Derek even recalled receiving complaints for riding his snowmobile on his own property. There were practical advantages as well. Maintaining separate shops in Minnesota and Wisconsin meant Derek often spent hours driving between locations instead of being with his family. By moving everything to one property, he hoped to simplify both his business and his personal life. Tennessee's more central location also reduced the time needed to travel to many of the automotive events he attended throughout the Southeast, while the state's lower cost of living and lack of a personal income tax made the move financially attractive for a growing business. For a while, everything worked exactly as Derek had hoped. The warmer climate allowed him to film throughout the year, his travel became more manageable, and his Vice Grip Garage brand continued growing at an extraordinary pace. Yet the very success that made the move worthwhile eventually created an entirely different problem. As millions of viewers became familiar with the property through years of videos, the privacy and freedom that had drawn the family to Tennessee gradually began slipping away. Looking back, it's clear that the cancellation of Roadworthy Rescues was only one part of Derek's story during this period. While the television series came to an unexpected end because of corporate restructuring at Warner Bros. Discovery, Derek's journey continued through personal setbacks, privacy challenges, and the kind of sustained pressure that tests whether someone built something real or just got lucky for a while. Derek has consistently demonstrated that what he built is real. As of 2026, Derek continues to produce content through Vice Grip Garage, which now operates alongside a second channel called Vice Grip Lodge that focuses on the property and lifestyle side of his life rather than purely automotive content.